turn that one off. All right, good evening, everyone. This is the March 18th, 2020 Cottage Grove City Council meeting, which I'm calling to order. The first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. So for those of us that are in here, please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and
justice for all. Thank you for that, Larry. Councilmember Mills and Councilmember Thiede, who are remote with us this evening. So, all right, next on our agenda is roll call. Will the clerk please do the roll?
Councilmember Mills.
Here.
Councilmember Dennis.
Here.
Councilmember Thiede.
Here.
Councilmember Olson.
Here.
Mayor Bailey.
Here. The next part of our agenda is open forum. Being that we don't actually have anybody, citizens in the audience tonight, we're doing this meeting a little differently. And so there is an option for anybody that might be doing this through Zoom or has a question is either welcome to type it in if it's not on our agenda tonight, or they can speak if they want. Is there anybody at all? Okay, I will go ahead then. Oh, we do have one? Just one person that's on that I see. Okay. So we have somebody that's watching as we have multiple computers. If you can see me, I've got my computer on one side, and the other side I can see if there's people out on the internet, if you will. And if anybody wants to participate, they're welcome to do so, along with Councilmember Mills and Councilmember Thiede, who are also at a remote locations. Next then, since we didn't see anybody that wants to speak on open forum, we're going to move to the adoption of the agenda. Before we make a motion, I did want to make an amended agenda, which under 6, which is our next item, is a presentation. I'm going to read a statement, and then we're going to invite Gwen Martin, our Deputy Director of Public Safety, dealing with emergency management, and I believe it's Angela Eastman, who is the Emergency Preparedness Coordinator for Washington County, are going to give us an update. So if the council is good with me with that addendum to the change to presentations, I'll look for a motion to approve.
I'll motion, Mayor, that we approve the amended adoption of the agenda.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Dennis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Olson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye? Yes,
We need to do a roll call vote.
that's right. Everything is roll call tonight because
is
we're with that. All right, you want to start?
Councilmember Dennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Olson?
Aye.
Councilmember Thiede?
Yes.
Councilmember Mills?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes. All right, so now we are to 6, which is presentation. So I'll just start with saying good evening, everyone, and thanks you for joining us. I do want to start out this meeting by talking about our response to the COVID-19 virus. These are challenging times, and the 250-plus employees of the City of Cottage Grove continue to work hard to provide all the essential services that our residents and business owners are depending on. I will add that I'm extremely proud of the adjustments we've made throughout the city in the interests of community safety and health. You might not have noticed, but our police and firefighters are still responding to calls. The Public Works team has been out patching potholes and trimming trees, and the Parks and Rec Department continues to work on getting ready for the spring and the summer months. We have made numerous adjustments within our city hall here as well, hosting virtual meetings and accepting payments over the phone and online, all in an effort to cut down on face-to-face contact as we do our part to stop the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We're pushing out as much information as we can to our social media pages, so please make sure you're following us on Facebook and Instagram. We've also set up a special web page at cottagegrovemn.gov/COVID-19, where we have links on all the latest information on both the state, federal, and city services and the adjustments that we're making. This seems to be changing daily, so please keep checking back for updates. So thank you for your patience and understanding in this difficult and unprecedented times in our lives. I'm proud to live here and serve such a kind, compassionate, and caring community. I have no doubt we'll get through this together because we have great people here. We take care of our kids, our seniors, and our neighbors. And with that, I would like to turn it over to our Emergency Management Director for the City of Cottage Grove to provide all of us an update on the current status of the COVID-19 response. So Gwen Martin, if you want to start us off at least.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, Honorable City Council members. Again, as he stated, my name is Gwen Martin, Deputy Director of Public Safety for the City of Cottage Grove in the Emergency Management Division. We have been working hard ever since January when this first sort of came to light. We've been sending out emails and updates, maintaining situational awareness, participating in local, regional, state, national conference calls, trying to stay on top of this. As you indicated, the information is changing almost as we speak. And we are doing our best to stay on top of it and provide the city with the most up-to-date information so we can act appropriately, so we can provide for the safety of our employees, of our citizens, and still continue to provide city services to our community. So with that, you had asked a request for an update on the COVID-19, the coronavirus. And I'm not a public health person by trade. I am a police officer by trade. So I have asked Angela Eastman, who is the Emergency Preparedness Coordinator for Washington County Public Health and Environment, to speak tonight.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Again, Angela Eastman. I'm Emergency Preparedness Coordinator with Washington County Public Health and Environment. I am not a doctor, I am not a nurse, and I am not an epidemiologist. So with that, I will present to you some slides that were given to me by our county epidemiologists about 2 hours ago. They were accurate. As the captain said, we are seeing quickly changing information, so I just wanted to give you a very short update. So on the slide, hopefully everyone can see that. You see sort of some, what we call an epidemiological curve, and the purple is the current state of Italy, what's going on in Italy, and then the lower one with the hash marks across it is South Korea. So you can see that they've had a lot of cases. You've probably heard that in the news. South Korea is doing a little bit better. We are right now sort of on track with Italy, but we are hoping to look more like South Korea coming up. So where we are right now, we are in the second phase of this epidemiological curve, which is community mitigation. So we've been through the containment phase, we're on to community mitigation, which I'll talk about, and then we move into pandemic management and demobilization. So we were on phase 2 of this graph. And by the way, at the end of this, I will share the website where this information can be found from the Minnesota Department of Health in case you'd like to look into this a little bit more. So as I mentioned briefly, containment is when we had a handful of cases. The first case was identified in Minnesota. We focus on isolation, identification, and quarantine. Right now, as I mentioned, we're in the community mitigation stage where we have multiple cases, different types of exposures. This is a stage we're at now where we have closed schools, canceling large community events, promoting virtual meetings such as this, and video faith services, et cetera. The next phase we would be going into is pandemic management, where there's widespread transmission and hundreds of cases from across the state. When I left my office today, I believe there were 70 cases in Minnesota, and we have 3 cases in Washington County currently. So I'm sure you've been seeing a lot of this information, but just briefly, I want to remind you of the symptoms of COVID-19. Again, all of the information that we're providing is from the CDC and the Minnesota Department of Health. So patients are with confirmed COVID-19 have mild to severe respiratory illness with symptoms of fever, cough, and shortness of breath. Some patients have had other symptoms, including muscle aches, headaches, sore throat, and diarrhea. These symptoms may appear 2 to 14 days after an exposure. The question that we are getting and is being flooded to our offices and the Minnesota Department of Health is, how long should I stay home if you are sick? The guidance is very clear. Anyone with a fever or respiratory symptoms, cough, or shortness of breath should stay home, and we're calling it self-quarantine or isolation. Then you would want to do that for 7 days from the onset of your illness or 72 hours after resolution of a fever with no medication. So very important with that. This includes those that are not being tested. Again, you're going to hear me say it multiple times. If you are feeling sick, please stay home. You should isolate yourself from household and intimate contacts as much as possible and limit public activities. Casual contact, including coworkers, should continue to monitor for symptoms. So how long should you stay home? Again, if you have symptoms of a respiratory disease, whether this is influenza or COVID-19, it does not matter. Stay home if you're sick for 7 days and 3 days with no fever until you have improvement, whichever is longer. So again, your fever should be gone without using any kind of medication. So if you have a fever and coughing for 4 days, you need to stay home for 3 more days with no fever for a total of 7 days. And if you've had a fever and coughing for 5 days, you need to stay home 3 more days for a total of 8 days. So testing, this is important. This information just changed as recently as yesterday. So Minnesota Department of Health has currently reduced the testing to 3 specific groups of people. Currently, the only people that are being offered tests are hospitalized patients who are presenting with significant symptoms, healthcare workers, and individuals living in congregate settings like long-term care facilities. So if you have symptoms and you can manage those symptoms at home, that's okay. If you have symptoms and you can manage those symptoms at home, you do not have to seek health care or be tested for COVID-19. If you are older and you have underlying medical conditions, it may be helpful to let your healthcare provider know when you are sick. They may have some advice for you. Certainly, if you're experiencing any kind of a medical emergency, we want you to deal with that like you would to either call 911 or go to the hospital. But if you are having symptoms, feeling sick, just stay home. There are no tests that are going to be available. So again, stay home when you're sick, stay home whenever you can, wash your hands, practice social distancing, and stay home when you're sick. We've provided the website here for you where all of this information came from. And with that, I can certainly take questions with the reminder that I am not a doctor, a nurse, or an epidemiologist.
All right. Well, thank you, by the way, for sharing that information. Because we've got 2 council members that are not in the room with us this evening, Councilmember Thiede or Councilmember Mills, do either of you have any questions for her? Or Gwen?
I do not. Thank you very much
Okay.
for sharing.
Thank you. Councilmember Olson does have a question.
Thank you very much for sharing it. A lot of the information that you just shared, as you referenced, is available from the Minnesota Department of Health. I'm actually looking at their website right now, which is the website that you referenced. And I first of all can't thank everybody on the team, whether it's Washington County or the City of Cottage Grove or any of the other surrounding area agencies for everything that they're doing. This is a very fluid situation, constantly changing information. I know that from a business perspective, where I work, we're on conference calls multiple times during the course of a day, trying to assess and determine, policy initiatives and things we can do to try to best mitigate some of the risk for folks, and I know you're doing the same. So I thank you. I thank all of you because it's a challenging time. There's no question about that. My question revolves around what they would call in the scientific world stealth transmission. I am also not a doctor, nor am I a nurse or an epidemiologist, so we're on the same page there. One of the challenges, of course, whenever you deal with health-related issues is the proliferation of information. There's an awful lot of it out there, but if you don't know how to properly connect the dots, you can get yourself in a world of trouble really quick. That's why the doctor says don't go on WebMD and try to diagnose yourself when you're not feeling well, because you'll come up with a disease that they haven't seen since the 1950s, and you'll think you have it. With regard to stealth transmission, from what I've been reading and from what the Minnesota Department of Health says right on this webpage here, it is thought that this virus is spread mainly from person-to-person contact, through respiratory droplets, when a person is symptomatic. That being said, there's been some research that's been done, particularly by the Columbia School of Public Health, that was published in the journal Science Monday, that talks about stealth transmission, which is people who are asymptomatic. Much like other coronaviruses, whether it's a cold or the flu or any of the other families of coronaviruses that are out there, everybody's body reacts differently. My question is this: knowing that there are people out there who may be in a different health situation, though they've been exposed to the virus, meaning asymptomatic, they still could potentially present risk to others who have suppressed immune systems, people who might be on immunotherapy drugs, people who are using chemotherapy for cancer, et cetera. What steps, if any, are we recommending for the quote-unquote healthy population to mitigate risk to overall public health?
Well, Councilmember, thank you for your question. I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with the term about the stealth spreading of that disease. A couple things that I do know: this is a novel virus, meaning that it's a new virus that we haven't seen, so we don't know everything about the virus. But to more directly answer your question, I think, again, using the guidance that we've gotten from the CDC and the Minnesota Department of Health, and also from our governor through the recent executive order that was issued for healthy folks and everything else. It's all of those things, which is don't shake hands and be conscious of personal space and all of that information. So I apologize, I'm not familiar with the stealth concept. I certainly will take that back to our epidemiologist and see if I can find some more information out about that. But other than the guidance that we're getting from those two sites, I have not heard a lot of conversation. I am on about 6 conference calls a week, and we aren't talking a lot about asymptomatic transfer at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Gwen, did you have anything to add?
I was just going to add one thing. Again, that bullet point there, that practice social distancing. We are encouraging all people, not just sick people with symptomatic, but people who are healthy, to practice a social distancing, which means keeping 6 feet away from people for an extended period of time, for 10 minutes. Standing next to somebody right here, it's inevitable. It happens as she backs more further away. But if you can avoid being next to somebody for 10 minutes within that 6-foot distance, that's what we are recommending for all people, healthy or sick. And then again, if you hadn't heard, stay home when you're sick.
Yeah, and of course, we're seeing a lot of businesses and municipal agencies, including ours, encouraging people to work remotely if they can. For example, we have 2 council members who are remote this evening into this council meeting, and that's being done with a purpose. There's a reason behind that. So I was just curious if, there were any other thoughts or any other bullet points of guidance that you might be able to share. And it sounds like it's really consistent across the entire spectrum, which is symptomatic or not, practice social distancing. If you're symptomatic, stay home, try self-care. I know there's a shortage of tests nationwide due to some of the testing supplies being short. So the state of Minnesota, as you mentioned earlier, is really tightening down the qualifications, as it were, for being tested. But really it boils down to everybody just practice really good, disciplined public health practices. Wash your hands a lot, whether you feel bad or not. Work from home if you can, whether you feel bad or not, those sorts of things. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's what we are talking with our employees about. That's why we've made arrangements for some folks to telework and alternated. We've got flexibility in schedules, staggered schedules to allow some people to come in so they're not all in the same area. And with our meeting rooms, conference rooms, if you've been in there, most of the chairs have been removed and they're set up so that if we do have a meeting in person, everyone is maintaining that 6 feet of difference, so we're not, so we are practicing social distancing.
Yeah, and I know at my house, my wife happens to be a dental hygienist, so she's kind of a clean freak anyway. But at my house, and then within the business that I work in, obviously lots of enhanced cleaning going on and very specific guidance around what we need to clean and when and those sorts of things. So once again, I appreciate everything that you folks are doing. I know it is unbelievably challenging. You're probably getting a million questions, not just from me, but from the public in general. And it's a very dynamic situation. So thank you all very much for being here tonight, for giving us this advice, for continuing to monitor this situation and pushing information out to the public as quickly as you can. I think the key word here is be vigilant, but be rational, be reasonable. Understand that there's no need for panic. There's no need for people to act irrationally, but take care and do the right things and be prudent and make good decisions. Thank you.
Agree.
I don't necessarily have a question, more of a comment, so it kind of piggybacks a little bit. So I've gotten a few messages and calls and such today from different citizens asking certain questions, so I just wanted to add a little bit to the mix here. One is, just to be clear, the ice arena is closed. You may have saw cars parked there, but that might have been teachers, or because I believe teachers are still reporting to work.
That is a fact.
So I just want to make sure you know that the ice arena is closed. I had somebody ask that question. Secondly, the city doesn't really have any authority over telling or requiring businesses at this point that they have to limit the amount of toilet paper or canned goods or breads or things like that. Though I do think a lot of companies are starting to do that. Because I know there was some concern that there's a lot of stuff that's out, not just in Cottage Grove, but everywhere. However, I am also aware that there are shipments still flowing. It's taking a little bit of time because this kind of took everybody by surprise, especially with certain types of things that were being purchased. So I wanted to mention that to the public too, that you just got to call or you just got to stop by and check. And you can be innovative in where you go check to, and suggestions are everything from whether you go to Menards or the hardware store or the gas stations or a dollar store or something like that, any of those places. There's all kinds of places that carry some of the things you might be interested in. And then lastly, just before I came here, I got my drive-through, got my cup of coffee. And I can tell in a positive way. I know we've been seeing some things, I know earlier staff was commenting about, social distancing is not just internal to being indoors, but also outdoors. But I wanted to share with you, I was driving by Chipotle and they were handing food out the door, but everybody was separated. It was pretty amazing to see. If I wasn't driving, I would have taken a picture to share because they were literally spaced out along the sidewalk, and then some people you could tell were still sitting in their cars. So it is serious. We don't want people to diminish, but we don't want people to panic. But if we do the things that they're asking us to do, we're going to get through this just fine. And I mean that sincerely. So kudos to everybody out there that's doing their best through a very difficult situation. Thanks to the both of you for coming and sharing that. And again, if you have any further questions or you want to keep updated, again, you can check out our social media pages, our city website, or as she had mentioned here, you can see it on the screen there, the state of Minnesota's health regarding coronavirus. So we've got those options. All right. Thank you too.
Any other questions? I didn't hear if you had any questions, Councilmember Dennis.
Well, thank you. I actually did not have a question, but appreciate all the hard work everyone's doing. And again, we do what we choose, right? And I think all of us advocate people, showing decency and kindness at a difficult time, taking and purchasing what you need, not necessarily going after, everything and stockpiling. We will get through this. History has indicated that, our society and those before us have gone through all kinds of different things. So we are situated very well here in this country, some of the best medical and science in the world. We have good levels of hygiene. We have good levels of nutrition and a lot of great technology and people here like yourselves who want to make a difference and help. So I think we can do well. We can be reasonable, make good, prudent decisions, but we have to keep living too. We have to keep living because we're going to have tomorrow. So that's what I would say. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you hadn't heard, stay home when you're sick.
Really?
Really?
All right, thank you too. All right, no other presentations, so we'll move to 7 on our agenda, which is consent. Is there any items that council would like to pull on consent? Councilmember Olson, you had one, I think?
Yes, E, please.
You wanted to do E. And Councilmember Dennis, you had one too?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to pull item H, Planning Commission Chair Appointment.
Okay, and then I'll check with our 2 other council members that are remote. Councilmember Thiede, do you have anything you want to pull? You might be on mute. Okay, how about Councilmember Mills?
Letter M, please.
Letter M?
Yep.
I was wondering about that, thank you.
I'm good.
All right, thanks, Dave. All right, so we'll go back to, we'll just start back from the beginning, seeing no other ones. We'll start with E, which is Councilmember Olson, 3.2 off-sale liquor license.
Perfect, thank you, Mayor. So this item is to authorize issuance of a 3.2 off-sale liquor license to Linn Retail Centers Incorporated, doing business as Cottage Grove BP, which is located at 8490 East Point Douglas Road South, and Holiday number 3512, located at 6921 Pine Arbor Drive. I pulled this item because I have a couple of questions that I'm not entirely sure who to direct towards. So I'm gonna ask Jennifer, but Jennifer, please delegate if you feel there's somebody else who can help with this. It is my understanding that with regard to liquor licenses in the city of Cottage Grove, we have a city code that prohibits liquor licenses being issued to two competing entities that are within a certain square footage, or a certain footage radius. And I know that Linn Retail Centers operates the Cottage Grove BP, which is near Top 10 Liquors, both of whom would have this intoxicating beverage license. And so I did a little bit of map questing, and it looks like the Cottage Grove BP is actually not a far enough distance away from Top 10 to qualify under the current ordinance. And I'm going to turn to my partner, Steve Dennis, because you're a liquor store owner, so you have one of these licenses. You might know the code or the ordinance better than I. But am I looking at this the right way?
Well, thank you, Councilmember Olson. The city code is very specific in its language. The words that are used, the plain English words that are used, is that you cannot have more than one off-premise license within 1,000 foot. So it's a linear measurement.
And when you say off-premise, you're referencing the difference between a retail establishment.
Right, so there's off-premise where you buy, it's a package store, you take that away and you enjoy the product.
So that's like your business?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, and then you have on-premise, which is bars and restaurants, those types of applications.
So that's why you and Carboni's can be next to each other?
Correct.
Okay.
So our city code, as it's stated, and if you go through it line by line, word by word, analyze and break that down, what you find is that there is no language delineating the difference between what would be considered as a full-strength license that I have and a 3.2 license that is being initiated here.
Yeah, when I looked at the code, I saw nothing that stipulated one versus the other.
Correct. So if you look at this, and in essence, there's two applications here. You've got the one down in East Point Douglas, which would be inside that measurement. And then you have the other location, which is up on 70th, up by Junction 70. They do not have a competing business or similar business like that within that space. So again, this, I think, at least in my perspective, I would look at it in a very linear and logical fashion, without any emotion. The one application very clearly to me speaks to be one that would be applicable. The other one would not, because again, the findings of fact on this are that the language in the code does not identify a difference between the two licenses relative to their spacing.
Okay.
And that's just a very clear thing.
And that's really why I asked, is because when I looked at it, I saw that they were closer than the code stipulated, and then when I read the code, it didn't say anything about 3.2 versus not 3.2. It was basically intoxicating beverage.
Right, and one of the things that tends to happen here, and we all kind of work together on this, you know, reinforcing that we don't want to set a bad precedent or a different precedent. Remember that the council always has the ability to create its own finding if it can explain from a reasonable standpoint why that finding is being applied differently. So in this case here, we just don't have the language in the contract, if you understand what I'm saying. It's just not there. So, you know, I also reached out to staff and had concerns about this and brought it to the attention. And I know that one of the associates of our city attorney had actually weighed back on that to me. I don't recall who else may have been copied on that email. But in essence, the bottom line result was stating that, well, based on this, I would view it would be a good use. But the language doesn't support the use. And so what we deal with here are specifics. It's not arbitrary status. If you're gonna do something, we have to have the structure to support doing it. And if we don't, that to me would be setting a precedent issue whereby we would have a challenge that somebody could come back on later on. So I know the staff is gonna push hard on this and advocate for this, but I think this is one of those circumstances where, at least as a council, I think we have to look to the language and actually go with what the language says in this instance.
Well, and Mayor, the reason I pulled this, and thank you, Councilmember Dennis, because you gave me a lot more information than I actually was looking for, was I was just curious if we needed to separate the two. If we needed to, you know, have one on one action and one on a different action, because the one, there's no conflict. But the other, there appears to be a conflict, unless I'm looking at it wrong. So I don't know who on the staff can help me with that, but obviously, thank you for your insight. Is there any other insight that we can gather on that?
Mayor, members of the council, Joe Fischbach will start. Unfortunately, our city attorney was having a little bit of sound issues to capture all of the question. So Joe will start to see if he can answer your questions.
Okay.
And then if we can ensure that maybe Corey has the ability to chime in regards to the distance question and the interpretation of the code related to the difference of the sale of liquor, that would be great.
Thank you.
So the response that we got back from the city attorney is intoxicating liquor and 3.2% malt liquor are two different definitions or two different licenses. She mentioned intoxicating liquor is ethyl alcohol, distilled fermented spiritus, vinous, or malt beverage containing more than 3.2% of alcohol by weight. Subdivision 9, 3.2 malt liquor, 3.2% malt liquor is malt liquor containing not less than 1/2 of 1% alcohol by volume, no more than 3.2% alcohol by weight. And then she highlighted that the code 3-12-4D, no off-sale intoxicating license with emphasis on off-sale intoxicating shall be granted for premises located within 1,000 feet of another licensed off-sale intoxicating premises as measured between the nearest building walls of the establishments.
So what she's saying basically is that 3.2 is the left hand and intoxicating is the right hand, and we have one left and one right, so there's no conflict. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's the interpretation, and that's the way that we have done it for years. I guess I can't put a year on it, but I would mention that currently Cub has a 3.2 license, which would be in conflict with Top 10 license, as well as Super America on East Point Douglas and Hy-Vee liquor would be in conflict.
I see. Okay, so when I read the code, and again, I'm not an attorney, but I just didn't see language that differentiated between the two, and so in my very rudimentary understanding, you know, you need a license for both. They can both intoxicate someone. You know, you have to be 21. You could be pulled over for DUI, whether you drink 3-2 beer or not 3-2 beer. And I just didn't see that there was any sort of delineation there. But you're saying the attorney is telling us, and I did not see that response. I don't know who that came to, but you're saying the attorney is telling us there is a very clear defined difference between the two, right?
I don't want to speak for the attorney, but the way the email was worded, that they're two separate licenses per definition in state statute.
Okay. So per state statute, what about our city code?
So basically, we changed the city code to mimic the state statute, because it used to be, it wasn't 3-2 before, it was non-alcoholic. And they changed that to be 3-2.
Okay.
So if you look at our statute, it talks about 3-2%, but it doesn't have a definition of either one of them, correct?
Yeah, it really doesn't.
Right.
So, and that's where I got a little tripped up, I guess, is I didn't quite understand that, so, okay. Anybody else have anything to chime in?
Yeah, Councilmember Dose, you want to?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple things, again, as Councilman Olson had mentioned, this is, the key word being used is interpretation. An interpretation, can mean different things to different people. Again, we don't have specific language defining. Now, the definitions of the two alcohol products, that's not even remotely what this is about. When it comes to identifying and creating a city code, that's something done under a local control issue. So the state of Minnesota does not advocate or instruct us that we have to have a certain limitation. So I'll give you as an example. The city of St. Paul has a mile between those licensed venues. The city of Cottage Grove chose to have a 1,000-foot line. In the past, the city of Cottage Grove decided to have one liquor license per every 7,500 residents. And that got changed about 14 years ago. If I recall, I think I'm right on with that. So again, these are things, as I used the term earlier, we do what we choose. The city, in previous forms of leadership, chose to set up a standard to this definition. It's not the one key fitting every lock. So I just want that to be clear. So again, I just think, the one application is perfect. I mean, I'm happy to support it. The other one does not meet the language of what we have established in our code. There's nothing there that identifies a defined difference between the two structures.
Okay.
Any thoughts, Mayor?
No, the challenge would be, in my opinion, Cub has 3-2 there, SA has 3-2. I don't know, does Holiday on the other side by G Will have it? I didn't think they did. I wasn't sure, though. So it appears that maybe more and more of the gas stations are going 3-2. I know there might be, I don't know if it'll happen this year or not, but we may have to look at our ordinances to begin with, because I think there's some changes coming from the state as it relates to alcohol other than in designated liquor stores and such. But we'll have to wait and see what happens with that, if it does, even this year, because of all the stuff going on. So other than stating that it would be a precedent to set the other direction, I think if we did, because we already granted it to Cub, we already granted it to SA or Hy-Vee in that particular case, so I don't see how this would be any different.
I guess I'd like to hear from the attorney if she's
Is she
able to
able
speak to
to-
us.
Are you there, Corey? Maybe not.
She said she dialed in.
Mayor, members of the
Oh,
council,
there she
There we
is.
go.
Now we
I
can
her
hear you.
now.
can you repeat the question, please? I apologize, I'm having some audio issues, but now you're on my telephone, so I can hear everything.
Well, we had a lengthy dialogue about the difference between various off-sale liquor licenses. And I guess I brought up the issue because as I looked at this on the consent calendar, I remembered that from an ordinance language perspective, there's 1,000-foot buffer zone, so to speak, between entities that we grant these off-sale liquor licenses to. And Joe shared the response from someone in your office about there being a clear delineated difference between 3.2 and I believe, Joe, the language you used was intoxicating liquor, and you said that they're different. And so I'm curious, when I look at our city code, I don't see that delineation. I don't see language that says anything other than intoxicating, and these are both intoxicating beverages. You can be pulled over for DUI. You have to have a 21 or older ID. There's special circumstances that enable you to purchase this product. It's intoxicating beverage. So what I'm curious about is, the one entity being Holiday, which is near the Junction 70 restaurant, that appears to be really easy because there's no other off-sale facility near there. But the one that is Cottage Grove BP, we have other off-sale facilities near there that sell intoxicating beverages, top 10 liquor. So then it was brought out that Superamerica has a 3.2 license near Hy-Vee, and that Cub has a license, which is also near top 10. So I guess I'm just looking for some clarity around our city code as it relates to this particular item, because the way I read the code was there isn't a whole lot of differentiation spelled out.
Thank you for that repeat of the issue. And it's important to understand that intoxicating liquor is a legally defined term in state law. And as Joe stated, it is intentionally defined as malt beverages containing more than 3.2% alcohol. On the other hand, another liquor license that the city offers, which again is legally defined by state law, is a 3.2% malt liquor license. And they are two separate licenses. So when we use the words in 3-12-4 subdivision D to say no off-sale intoxicating license, we're limiting it to intoxicating liquor license establishments. So off-sale intoxicating liquor establishments, they have to be 1,000 feet from any other off-sale intoxicating liquor establishments. That is the only distance requirement that we have in the code relating to alcohol, intoxicating to intoxicating.
Forth and if we changed how we looked at this, we'd be doing, we've had precedents before and decisions, and it would not be a good thing to do. So.
Okay. All right, so then we'll move on the consent at this point to H, which is the Planning Commission Chair appointment, and that was pulled by Councilmember Dennis.
All right, thank you, Mayor. It's with full confidence that I recommend the reappointment of Tony Kambata as our Planning Commission Chair. Mr. Kambata, who happens to be here tonight, was appointed to fill an unexpired term on the Planning Commission on September 6th of 2017 and was reappointed on March 1st of 2018. He was appointed as the Planning Commission Chair in March of last year. During his tenure as chair on the commission, he has served in a professional manner and distinguished himself as a reasonable voice in supporting our city's direction for responsible growth. So it's my request that the council reappoints him into that Planning Commission Chair.
Sounds good, and I don't know how you broke in here, but you made it in. Thank you. All right, and then Councilmember Mills, you were pulling M, which is a Public Service Commission's Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. The Public Service Commission unfortunately hasn't met quite yet this year, but I look forward to being a part of that commission. But I do highly recommend the reappointment of Steve Ingram to the chair for the Public Service Commission. I know he has served in that position and has done a good job, and we'd like to see him continue with that.
All right, and we're glad to have him back too, so thank you for that. All right, that was all the items that were pulled for comment or consent. Is there any other items? All right, at this point then Councilmember Dennis.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to ask that we take E and pull that for a separate vote. I'd like to separate those two license locations out, please.
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a motion to approve consent minus E at this point. Then we'll do that one as a separate vote. So
Move consent minus E.
yes. So I'll look for a motion.
Moved.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Olson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Mills. All right, now we'll go to roll.
Councilmember Mills,
Approve.
Councilmember Dennis,
Approved?
Councilmember Thiede,
Approve.
Councilmember Olson,
Approved.
Mayor Bailey.
Approved. All right, now we'll, and I think I can do this, I'll look to staff to see. What I'm gonna do, since Councilmember Dennis would like to separate the two items. E, just for the public again, is 3-2 off-sale liquor licenses to Linn's Retail Centers Incorporated. There's actually, they own two places in Cottage Grove. I think one, Councilmember Dennis doesn't have really any concern with because of the proximity, the other one maybe so. So what I'll look for is a motion to approve the 3-2 off-sale liquor license, Linn Retail Centers Incorporated, doing business as Grove BP located at 8490 East Point Douglas Road South. We'll do that one first, okay?
So moved.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Thiede. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Mills. Any further discussion? All right, we'll do a roll.
Councilmember Mills,
Approve.
Councilmember Dennis,
Denied.
Councilmember Thiede,
Approved.
Councilmember Olson,
No.
Mayor Bailey.
Approved. So I believe it's a 3-2. Okay. And then we'll do, the second part of that was the 3.2% off-sale liquor license to Linn Retail Centers Incorporated, doing business as holiday number 3512, located at 6921 Pine Arbor Drive. And I'll need a motion on that one.
Moved.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Olson,
Second.
second by Councilmember Thiede. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll start the roll again.
Councilmember Mills,
Approve.
Councilmember Dennis,
Approved?
Councilmember Thiede,
Approved.
Councilmember Olson,
Approved.
Mayor Bailey.
Approved. So if anybody was interested, I know online maybe, if you're wondering, everything that was on tonight's consent calendar, all of those items have been approved. So we will now move to 8, which is approved disbursements, which is A is pay the bills. I'll need a motion.
Move the bills.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Thiede. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Olson. Again, do the roll.
Councilmember Mills,
Approve.
Councilmember Dennis,
Approved?
Councilmember Thiede,
Approve.
Councilmember Olson,
Approved.
Mayor Bailey.
Approved. All right, next we'll move to 9, which is public hearings. We do have one this evening. A is the 80th and Hemingway Market Rate Multifamily Housing Project. And Christine Costello, you're going to take us through this. So welcome this evening.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Tonight before you is the 80th and Hemingway. It's a market rate multifamily housing development. And just to provide a little bit of perspective here, the site is our former City Hall site. So in June 2011, it was determined that the city would build a new public safety City Hall building, which is located where we're at today. We did repurpose the old City Hall as the Business Enterprise Center, the BEC. It remained open until 2016, and at that time, we did close that. It did also become the temporary home of Fire Station Number 2 during the construction of Central Fire Station. And then once Central Fire Station was completed, The building again was empty and vacated in July 2018. We did in 2017, between the city and county, attempt to work together between the former city hall site and the library site to see if we could redevelop both parcels together. But due to the size, we couldn't accommodate each other's needs. So we moved forward with a letter of intent with DK Design and Development for the redevelopment of the city hall site. As part of the approvals tonight on the consent agenda was the mixed-use zoning. Our 2040 comprehensive plan guides this for mixed use. That's 20 to 40 units per acre. The proposal for 120 units puts us at 38 units an acre, which meets the requirement for the mixed-use district. We're also requesting rezoning from B1 limited business to mixed-use district. The image on the right is a layout of the proposed 4-story market rate building. Again, it's 120 units. There are 94 underground parking spaces and 116 surface spaces. The main access point is off Hemingway Avenue, and then the resident garage entry is the existing entry that was used by public safety when it was the City Hall building. That garage entrance is slightly curved, so it allows for the stacking because that is both the entrance and exit for the underground parking. There are proposed 31 studio units, 47 one-bedroom, 38 2, and 4 3-bedroom units. As part of the development, we haven't seen market rate development here in Cottage Grove since the mid-90s. So we're excited to have a project in which we can provide current amenities that people are looking for in a multifamily building, such as their deck and patio, in-unit washer and dryer, package room, and of course, dog wash and a run. As I mentioned before, the main access is off Hemingway. The underground parking is accessible. Existing shared driveway between the old City Hall site and library, that will be removed. The library will still maintain access to enter into their parking lot off of 79th. We've worked between the county, the developer, and us to remove that shared driveway, and the developer will saw cut that and patch, and then the library will be able to maintain circular access through their driveway. If parking for the library does become an issue, we can work with them to put additional parking along their north property line or in front of the library on Hemingway Avenue. It's not posted as no parking, so that would be an ability. And we'll work with the county as construction would take place to remove that access point. Trails and sidewalk, there's existing sidewalk along 80th and Hemingway. The developer is proposing a trail along the west side of the property line. As you can see, that goes north, and hopefully eventually that would connect to Oakwood Park, that we could get a connection in the future on the library parcel. So residents or any community citizens that are walking could take that trail to Oakwood Park. And the trail then curves around to the front of the building that faces inward. In terms of landscaping and open space, the developer is meeting our requirements for landscaping. They are taking down what trees are on site, but they're replacing them at our requirement at a 2.5-inch caliper, an additional 10, but they're adding more landscaping than what is actually there now. Additionally, there is not a park on site, but in a mixed-use type development, we're looking for these developments to use our existing parks in the area. So to be able to go to Oakwood Park, Carside Park, use our existing trails and sidewalks for that recreational amenity. To provide you some architecture, the developer has kindly provided an illustrative design, and as you can see, this is what would face out towards 80th Street. The cornice piece kind of on the southwest corner has some additional architecture features with the signage. And then on the right, you can see the elevations facing 80th, as well as what would face the Park Grove Library, which would be the main entrance. Additionally, these are the elevations facing Hemingway, and the building at 7500 80th Street. As part of the property, the old City Hall site that is owned by the Economic Development Authority, at our last meeting, we did go through the process of the sale and the development agreement. The property was appraised approximately for $600,000. Final negotiated price was at $400,000. We're comfortable with that because this is a return of the property on the tax roll. The developer is also not asking for any additional financing. The only thing that they've asked us to assist with is a grant to the South Washington Watershed District for underground stormwater infiltration and detention system. But there is no additional financing that the city is providing. In terms of the development agreement, this kind of outlines what the obligations are for each party. The development agreement is fairly standard in terms of it's the sale of the property, deposit of earnest money, which the developer has already done, completion of city approvals process, and this is that process that we're coming to the end of, and then developer payment of developer fees that we require of all developments. So before you are 5 items for recommendation tonight. The developer is on the phone with us. If you have any questions for them, or I know at last they wanted to do a short little presentation. If you're interested in that, otherwise the developer or I can take questions.
Okay, council, any questions at this moment for staff? And is our developer on the line? Maybe. No?
Della or Caitlin?
I would guess I would say, other than if they're there and they're not able to hear or see, I know that the council and the EDA have seen the designs, and I know it went through the planning commission already with unanimous vote. So if the council is okay to not take any information at this point from the developer, we can just move forward to the next phase of this process. Everybody okay with that? Councilmember Mills and Councilmember Deedy?
Yep.
Yes, I'm good with that.
Okay. So what we're going to do next, just so the public is aware, being that this is kind of a unique situation where the meeting is this evening, it is a public hearing. So what I'm about to do is I'm going to open the public hearing to allow residents to speak on this item. What I would suggest that you do if you do want to speak or ask a question, there is 2 different ways of doing it. On our stream, our Zoom stream, you can either type your question in the Q&A area, which then I would read it and put it into the record or have staff answer it. Or there's a feature on there called Raise Your Hand, where if you have something you want to share, and you don't have to do it over voice, it can be through, in essence, texting, if you will. So I'm going to go ahead then and officially open the public hearing. I will wait just a few minutes here just to make sure people are typing away.
And Mayor, members of council, I do have their presentation that I did pull up. And it's to kind of outline who their team is in terms of development partners, architect, and engineering, as well as local property management companies. Stephen Scott is a management company here out of the Twin Cities. These are some additional projects that North Shore Development Partners has done: St. Louis Park, Minnetonka, Plymouth, and St. Paul. So they're within the metro. And just a kind of reiteration of what is on site and available for those tenants. And again, site plan, the development was very conscious about the layout of the building in terms of sunlight, that each resident would have adequate sunlight in terms of where sun falls. And then the building's not a flat building. The building ebbs and flows. It has bump outs to provide some articulation so it won't feel like a solid wall along 80th Street and so forth. I thought I heard something, sorry.
Nope, I'm not seeing any questions or messages from anybody, so anybody at all? All right,
Hi, Christine, it's Caitlin and Della. I think
there they
I
are.
hope you can hear us.
Now we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay, we're here if you want. We're happy to answer any questions. if there aren't any, all we'd like to say tonight is we're super excited about this project, and it's been great working with city staff on this. We really think, we really want to make this a great asset to the entire community. So everyone on our team that Christine just mentioned is working hard to do that. And then just in midst of all the public events right now, I just want to thank you guys for your efforts and your technical department of hosting the meeting tonight and getting us all together and the great communication on that. And then just also from a city staff point of view, throughout this entire process over the last few years, it's been great working with them too. So with that, Della and I are happy to take any questions.
And I know this is the mayor, by the way. So I know that we've got a lot of interesting things happening in the world today. Do you have some type of a time frame where you're hoping to start this project once you get through approval?
We are proceeding with our construction drawings, and so our development agreement currently contemplates a closing in June of all of our financing and purchasing the land and picking up our building permit. So we're set up and on track to simultaneously commence everything in June.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Council, any questions now that we have her on, or them on the speaker? All right, thank you, too. So I'm going to go ahead then and close the public hearing. And council, if you noticed, we have 4 now, because we just held the public hearing, but 4 different items that we need to vote on, and we'll have to do roll after each. So if somebody on council would like to go with
I would
the,
move that we held the public hearing. I
Yep.
would move that we pass ordinance number 1023 approving the zoning amendment to change the zoning of property located at 7516th 80th Street South from B1 Limited Business to M-U Mixed Use District with a planned unit development.
all right, so I have a motion by Councilmember Thiede. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Olson. Any further discussion, council? All right, hearing none, I'm going to have our clerk please do the roll.
Councilmember Mills,
Approve.
Councilmember Dennis,
Approved?
Councilmember Thiede,
Approved.
Councilmember Olson,
Approved.
Mayor Bailey.
Approved. All right, the next one is adopting Resolution 2020-038, approving a site plan review for a 20-unit market rate multifamily housing development at 7516 80th Street South. I would need a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion by Councilmember Olson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Mills. Any further discussion, council? All right, seeing none, clerk will please do the roll.
Councilmember Mills,
Approved.
Councilmember Dennis,
Approved?
Councilmember Thiede,
Approved.
Councilmember Olson,
Approved.
Mayor Bailey.
Approve. Next one is, we'll need a motion to adopt EDA Resolution 2020-001, approving the sale of property from Cottage Grove Economic Development Authority to 80th and Hemingway LLC for development purposes.
So moved.
We have a motion by
Second.
Councilmember Mills. I think I heard a second by Councilmember Thiede. Again, any conversation, council? Hearing none, I will again turn to the clerk to do the roll.
Councilmember Mills,
Approved.
Councilmember Dennis,
Approved?
Councilmember Thiede,
Approved.
Councilmember Olson,
Approved.
Mayor Bailey.
Approved. And last on this one is to approve the development agreement with 80th and Hemingway LLC. And I will need a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion by Councilmember Olson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, we got a second by Councilmember Mills. Council, any other discussions? Seeing none, again, the clerk will please do the roll.
Councilmember Mills,
Approve.
Councilmember Dennis,
Approved?
Councilmember Thiede,
Approved.
Councilmember Olson,
Approved.
Mayor Bailey.
Approved. All right. Good luck, and we look forward to the project moving forward. All right, next on our agenda was 10 is bid awards. There are none tonight. 11 is regular agenda. We do have one item on our regular agenda tonight, which is A is Sullivan Pines. And Emily Schmitz, you will take us through this. So welcome.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor Bailey, council members. Again, the item before you this evening, I'll go back one, but I will make a note, it is Excelsior Group not Excelsior Homes. So the application submitted by Excelsior Group is for a zoning amendment, ultimately to change 121 acres to residential single-family residential R3 with the planned unit development overlay, as well as a preliminary plat for 247 single-family homes. The site is located just in the very northwest corner of the community, Woodbury on the north and Newport to the west. Oltman Middle School is just on the south side of 65th Street there, and Bailey Woods, the newly approved development that is in construction currently, is just to the east. Currently, as you can see, the majority of the site is tilled field. Again, this northeast corner does contain a wetland and some densely wooded areas. Again, the preliminary plat is for 247 units. The blue area here that I've circled indicates 55-foot wide lots, which would be conducive to a villa-type product. The remainder of the lots proposed would be 65-foot wide lots. Again, as I mentioned, a large portion of this plat would be dedicated as park area. It's approximately 34 acres, plus or minus. It will be entirely HOA maintained. Now, the developer has vetted this proposal through multiple avenues over the last handful of months. They did attend a council workshop, also conducted a neighborhood meeting, and of course, we're at the Planning Commission. So the one big note that I wanted to make that they have made an adjustment is here at the park, ensuring that there is a vista and a view into that park area as you come through the neighborhood. So this is the most up-to-date site plan that they proposed, adjusting and meeting those comments that they've heard over the process of the last couple of months. Land use, as part of the 2040 comprehensive plan, it is in fact guided single-family residential. The developer is proposing 2.03 units per acre, which is just in line with that 1 to 4 units per acre. Development access into the site will come from the continued Highland Hills Lane, coming from the Bailey Woods development, and then Goodview Avenue from the south will continue north through the site and kind of curve through, ultimately up to the Woodbury border. So the way I've been describing it is a realignment of Century Geneva Avenue. So currently Century and Geneva is an unimproved gravel road. So Goodview Avenue will be a collector, so a wider road through this development, which will take a lot of that traffic off of the unimproved gravel Geneva Century Road and bring it through this development. Ultimately, taking a lot of traffic away from this intersection here at 65th and Geneva Century, which has some tricky sight lines. There's some elevations there that make it tricky to turn in off there. So ultimately, by creating Goodview Avenue into this collector road through the development will be the best route for traffic coming through the development. And I will note we will continue to work with Newport on what the future of Geneva Century Avenue does look like as we move forward with that adjustment. The sidewalks typical will be required on one side of each street, with the exception of Goodview Avenue. We've required that there be a sidewalk on both sides of Goodview Avenue, given the density of this development, as well as the fact that there is a school on that south side of 65th Street that does in fact already have a sidewalk on both sides of the street on the south side of 65th. So we just want to make sure that we make that connection and allow pedestrians to access that sidewalk through the development and easily make it across 65th at the roundabout. The trail along 65th Street, will be continued all the way to the border at Newport. And then I also want to make note that we will have a connection somewhere at the Trail Vista, I'm going to continue to call it. But that connection will be made at the sidewalk there, as well as connections from the park area into Bailey Woods, where I know there were some trail connections stubbed as well. Prior to this application, we did not have a park master plan. So before you is the master plan that our Parks Commission has in fact approved, indicating mainly the fact that we want to use this passive park area for some trails, easily accessible by residents of Cottage Grove. This park master plan does indicate some additional amenities as we move forward or can improve in the park area in the future. The storm bases on the site will in fact be dedicated to the city, so we can maintain those throughout the future. Other outlets on the site will be required to be maintained by the HOA. These do include a monument sign. There would be required to be an outlet in itself, an entrance median, and then of course any cul-de-sac islands within these cul-de-sac areas would be required to be maintained by the HOA. As I mentioned, a large portion of this site is densely wooded. With that being said, we did 2 separate tree inventories per se on the site. So the developer was able to take this large area and do a large woodland tract inventory. So we didn't say, go out and tag every single tree in that huge wooded area, but they were able to do some measuring with large tracts and use a proxy that is a part of our zoning code to come up with the number of, goodness, I lost the word. Anyhow.
Well, it's an area of woods.
It is an area of woods, and for some reason I can't think of the term in the zoning code, but it'll come to me if I had to guess. But so this area was done as a woodland tract, as well as the existing farm site on the south side. With that dense wooded area, we allowed them to do a large woodland tract inventory there as well. The remainder of the trees on site were done as an individual tree inventory, and with the amount of trees that they are in fact preserving, no mitigation was required, ultimately. Landscaping, typically, we do require boulevard trees, 1 per each lot, 2 per each corner lot. Landscape requirements will be required, those cul-de-sac islands will be required to have some sort of landscaping in them as well. I also want to make note that the villa lots, typically we do require 4 what we call yard trees as a part of development. The villa lots, because of the small lot size, we will just require 2 trees as a part of those lots, but the remaining 2 trees will need to be planted elsewhere on the site. Ultimately, will require the landscaping to be continued along 65th Street so it aligns with existing developments along that corridor. Now, this is an outdated site plan, I will note that up front, but I thought it was a good visual to give an idea of the developer's proposed phasing plan. They have indicated that they do have a potential for 5 builders. I'll let them speak to clarification on who those builders might be if they're willing to share that. But this will give a varied architecture throughout the development, which I think will be a great addition to the area and the neighborhood. So with that being said, I will stand for any questions. I do know, I believe Tracy is with Excelsior Group, and I think she's on the line. So if you do have any questions for her, certainly let us know.
Okay, Tracy, you happen to be out there?
Yes, I am here. I believe that Ben has joined as well. So both of us are definitely here and can answer any questions that you might have. And we want to say thank you to the City of Cottage Grove for continuing to move forward in these times. We do appreciate you being still open and able to do these things online and to keep approvals going. So with that,
yep.
Questions?
Perfect. Council, is there any questions either for our staff or for, yes, Councilmember Olson has a question.
Thank you, Mayor. I've had a few residents from the Highland Hills neighborhood reach out to me, a couple of whom were not able to attend the public meeting because they were out of town on business. So I just wanted to ask a couple of questions on their behalf. Number one, and you've already addressed this, the question was tree mitigation. So what I heard you say was, they did a very thorough tree inventory on multiple tracts, obviously heavily wooded area. These residents happened to back up to the pond or the wetland. And so they were very concerned about tree removal and what sort of mitigation efforts might go in there. Are you able, Emily, to just perhaps repeat to some degree what you already had said and maybe add some color to it around, why there was no mitigation required, how many of the trees are being preserved. It sounds to me like this was also a concern on staff's behalf, and so they worked very closely with the developer to try to maintain as many trees as possible. But, you know, just maybe try to take it another step for the folks who are concerned about that.
Yep, so I'm imagining the concern is kind of along this property line.
You
is
are
what
correct.
Is what I'm understanding. This entire 34 acres of what will be dedicated park, no trees will be removed as a part of this development. Now, with the installation of a trail in the future, that will look different, but that will be a separate project that we'll vet through the Parks Commission, et cetera.
Okay.
The only trees that they're proposing to remove are kind of in this area, of that development.
And there's no tree mitigation required because when you look at the property as a whole, the amount being removed versus the amount being maintained is such that the ratio does not require mitigation. Is that correct?
That is correct. They're permitted to remove 35% of the qualifying inches
Right.
inventoried on site. They're well below that 35%.
Hence the reason they did such a thorough tree inventory. And of course, with any development, I know that when the parks and outdoor folks get involved, one of the things they look at is not just the number of trees, but they also look at the age of the tree. They look at the type of tree because different trees have different value in our code based on the sort of tree that they are. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about that?
Specifically, it's the health. So we require our inventory to indicate the health of the tree as well. So if it was ever questionable, if a tree was considered qualifying, we would certainly dig deeper into the health. But typically, a qualifying tree, and I don't know the standard off the top of my head from the zoning code and what that indicates, but if the health was questionable, we would work with the developer to make sure that if we need to save it or if it's best to remove it.
Right.
Type of a situation.
So a good example of that might be an ash tree that could potentially have the ash borer as an impact. That tree might be chosen for removal in lieu of a different sort of tree that is perhaps healthier.
Potentially. That would be up to the developer.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And that's really all I had, appreciate it.
Okay. Any other questions from either Councilmember Mills or Councilmember Thiede?
Nope.
No.
Okay, I guess the only general question I had for Stacy or whoever's on the line representing this group is, I know that there is a, kind of in the front corner, fronting along 65th, there's an individual landowner there that's separate from the main parcel. Have you been able to successfully navigate that purchase or in the process of that purchase?
Yes, we have. So there is a purchase agreement that has been signed, and that portion is part of this approval tonight.
Perfect, thank you. And I know that was a concern by myself and some of us, and obviously that landowner, because obviously this kind of cuts up your parcel there a little bit. So I'm glad to see that you guys were able to work through those details, so.
So are we.
All right. I don't see anybody else out there. This is not a public hearing, but I will give a moment if there is anybody that has questions that might be watching online to enter a type of question in the Q&A or quote unquote raise your hand. Anybody out there at all? All right, I'm not seeing anything. So at this point, we have two motions before us, and I can read the first one and then look for a motion in a second. So the first item is adopt ordinance number 1022, approving the zoning amendment to change the zoning of the 121.16 acres, from Ag 2 agricultural and R2.5 residential single family to R3 single family residential with the planned unit development.
Moved.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Olson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Mills. Council, any further discussion? Seeing none, I will let the clerk please do the roll.
Councilmember Mills,
Approved.
Councilmember Dennis,
Approved.
Councilmember Thiede,
Approve.
Councilmember Olson,
Approved.
Mayor Bailey.
Approved. And then the second and final one is adopt Resolution 2020-042, approving the preliminary plat for a residential subdivision be called Sullivan Pines, which will consist of 247 residential lots for single-family homes. And again, I'll need a motion.
Moved.
We have a motion by Councilmember Mills,
Second.
second by Councilmember Thiede. Any further discussion, council? Seeing none, I'll again turn over to the clerk for the roll.
Councilmember Mills,
Approved.
Councilmember Dennis,
Approved?
Councilmember Thiede,
Approve.
Councilmember Olson,
Approved.
Mayor Bailey.
Approved. All right, there we go. So congratulations and good luck with the development.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. All right. We'll still, even though we're all kind of separated a little bit here, the next item on our agenda is council comments requests, and I will do the normal, and I will start with Councilmember Mills. Is there anything that you would like to bring up under council comments or requests?
I just want to thank the staff and really anyone who's working locally here on all the action that's been taken, and it's consistently being taken, the steps that have been taken by our city. It has been tremendous, and the planning that's gone forth, everybody's done a great job in my opinion, and I think has made the city of Cottage Grove feel safer and also feel a little more less on the edge. And I appreciate all the steps that they've taken. So I just want to put that out there and then mention out to everyone, just hang in there. Let's all do this together. We can do it.
Perfect. Thank you, Councilmember Mills. Councilmember Dennis?
I'm good.
Councilmember Dennis is good. Councilmember Olson?
You skipped Councilmember Thiede.
No, I usually kind of go back this way, so.
Okay, perfect.
I promise, Dave, I'm going to get you.
He always leaves me to last.
Yeah. Sorry, Dave. Really, more than anything, I just want to say there is nothing more important right now on my plate than the care and concern for our residents in the city of Cottage Grove and our city staff. And I believe that's true of this entire council. We understand that this is a challenging time, and we identify with the frustrations that people are experiencing around getting good information and trying to figure out how to navigate through each day with regard to kids being home from school or not being able to go to work or not being able to maintain a normal routine. Each and every one of us at the city of Cottage Grove is focused on trying to do business in support of our residents to the very best of our ability as normally as possible. We've had to take some steps that I think a lot of other governmental agencies and businesses have taken to follow CDC guidelines, Minnesota Department of Health guidelines, but we are still focused on providing the level of service that our residents have come to expect from the city of Cottage Grove and its staff, and that frankly our residents deserve. You're still paying your taxes, you still deserve to have the same degree of service, and I can guarantee you that people are working sun up to sundown and after sundown to try to make that happen. I really cannot thank the staff enough. They are unbelievable. They are amazing. They are incredibly dedicated, incredibly committed. If you could see, if you could hear the kind of work that's been going on, in this building and remotely by our city staff to make sure that our residents are taken care of, it would absolutely astound you. But we're lucky that we get to peek behind the curtain and we get to see that with regularity. I have to tell you that our staff, everybody from public safety to our city administrator, to our finance team, to our public works team, and building inspections, and all of the various people in between, each and every one of them have a singular focus, and that is to continue to do business on behalf of the residents, city of Cottage Grove, and to make sure you're taken care of. So as I said earlier, there is nothing more important right now than the care and concern of our residents and our staff. And I encourage everybody in this community to take care of each other, to add that little extra dose of patience, that little extra dose of kindness, that little extra dose of awareness. Check on your neighbors, check on your friends, check on your family members. Make sure that you're taking good care of yourself and the people around you, and do whatever you can to help. There are small businesses who need our help because they can't do business as normal. If you can find a way to utilize a small restaurant, for example, to do takeout and then perhaps have that takeout delivered to our public safety team, you're going to benefit a number of different people, and gosh, at the end of the day, it's going to make you feel really good too. These are the kinds of things that we need to do. We need to be extra thoughtful. We need to be extra kind, extra respectful. And as Mayor Bailey said earlier, we're all in this thing together, and we're going to come out much stronger on the other end. This is an unbelievable and amazing community. South Washington County is like no other place I've ever been in my life. The reason I live here is because this community is so close, so tight, and when times are tough, we take care of each other. And so I thank you for your efforts. I thank our staff for their efforts. I thank my council peers as well as the mayor for their dedication and their commitment to our residents. And all I can say is, there's going to come a time, and hopefully it's sooner versus later, we're going to look back on this, and we're all going to be extremely impressed with the way that we took care of each other. And hopefully that is a lesson that we can learn and continue to practice until the end of our days here in South Washington County.
Okay, is that it? All right, Councilmember Thiede.
Just like to say kudos to everyone for a job well done in these challenging times, and hopefully it won't last too long.
All right, thank you. So I've got one quick item on, since Councilmember Olson was eloquent in his comments, and obviously I have my statement before. The one other thing I thought I would just share with the group and obviously with staff, and that regarding COVID-19 is one of the interesting things is other cities, as I'm aware, are looking to Cottage Grove for how we're doing it, how we're managing through it, which is pretty awesome. I'm on like a mayor's listserv for the League of Minnesota Cities, and the amount of mayors out there that are, well, first of all, many cities are canceling council meetings just outright. We're not. We figured out very quickly a way to make this happen, and as you heard by a couple of the people that had projects that were pending, we were still able to make this happen and work through the projects. So again, I'll just echo the comments of kudos to our staff and to the citizens, and it's pretty awesome when everybody's looking to us as a city for guidance and asking us how we're doing things. So that's pretty cool. So, and Brian, who's in the audience, and your partner over here in the corner, both of you, thank you for helping make this happen and continuing to work with our staff on at-home type, being computers and access and so on. Obviously, it makes them feel comfortable, makes all of us feel more comfortable, and it still keeps us all connected to the community. The other two items, one is just a general question that might be able to be quickly answered. One is, and I forgot to mention it earlier when we were talking about the old City Hall Public Safety Building on 80th Street. Did we ever do anything with the solar panels?
Mayor, members of the council, we did relocate those to the central fire station. So those are still in use and in contract with the supplier.
I noticed it on the picture, so I thought it would be great just to let the public know that we are continuing to use those, since a lot of people talk about sustainability, and we did get to repurpose those. And then my only other comment, and I don't know if we would need to do this as kind of a vote, but earlier this evening, obviously, we had some discussions about the difference between 3-2 and hard and all that kind of stuff. It might be a good time to revisit that code and maybe clean up the language, because it sounds like we've done things in the past where, we've kind of allowed the 3-2 thing in there, and until a question was brought up, that maybe it's not as clear as it should be or could be. So I would just like us to take a look at that. It might actually have some time now with, things maybe being a little slowing down out there with regards to developments and such. And then I'd also be, what are other cities doing as it relates to this kind of stuff? Do they separate them? Do they not separate them? Do they have, distance requirements? I'm just curious as to what we look like in comparison to other cities, because not that we can't be the cutting edge like I talked about earlier, but I also want to make sure that we don't get ourselves into a situation where we're giving it to this person over here, but not to this person here, and there's no clarity in there. And that's really what concerned me about this evening. So do I need a motion in that?
Mayor, it would be great if you could just do a roll call vote on that.
Okay, so I'll just go through. Joe, do you want to do the roll?
Councilmember Mills,
Approve.
Councilmember Dennis,
Approved.
Councilmember Thiede,
Approve.
Councilmember Olson,
Approve.
Mayor Bailey.
Approved. All right, so that was it for my comments and council comments requests. 13 this evening was a workshop open to the public. There are none. 14 is a workshop closed to the public. There is none this evening.
Move to adjourn.
So we're moving to adjourn. I have a motion by Councilmember Olson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Thiede. Our last roll call of the night.
Councilmember Mills,
Approve.
Councilmember Dennis,
Approved.
Councilmember Thiede,
Approve.
Councilmember Olson,
Approved.
Mayor Bailey.
Approved. We are adjourned, everybody. Take care.